This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Dogtown Nation, and welcome to the Two Green Browns podcast, part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network, with myself, Neil Dunworth. And today I'm going to be joined for a really great interview by John Chapman from the 49ers Rush podcast. It's our 49ers preview show where we discuss an awful lot of things. Basically, I don't think we leave any stone unturned. It was a really, really great chat with John. So that is going to be coming up. But first, let's play one of the ad promos from one of the other great podcasts available here on the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. So see you after this promo.
Hey, I'm Zach.
And I'm Kevin.
And we're the hosts of the Rinkside Podcast.
We were annoyed by the lack of hockey coverage on local sports radio and decided that we were stupid enough to try and provide some ourselves.
We have what we call the Rinkside Guarantee. We guarantee that the podcast you're currently listening to is better than ours. We are literally just two halves of one whole idiot trying to fumble through covering the Detroit Red Wings, the National Hockey League, and hockey in general.
Check us out on Facebook and Twitter at Rinkside Pod, and subscribe to us on all your favorite podcast providers.
Every time you listen to our podcast, it brings us one step closer to our ultimate business goal of purchasing the Arizona Coyotes and then moving them to Detroit. What? Now, back to your regularly scheduled programming, or just another commercial. We aren't the ones who make those choices.
So I'm joined today with John Chapman from 49ers Rush podcast, obviously a San Francisco 49ers podcast. As everybody knows, we like to do a little kind of look across enemy lines, or frenemy lines as I tend to call it from now on, just to see what's in store, I suppose, for us on Monday Night Football when the Cleveland Browns play against the San Francisco 49ers. So firstly, John, welcome to the pod today. How are you doing?
Man, what a great day. The fact that our teams are playing on Monday night, already excited about this matchup. Two first-place teams in their division. But then you add in the Monday night football aspect, and it just gets better. I'm so excited about this matchup. No clue how it's going to go. Two great teams, that are playing very, very well, their best football in their very last game. So excited to see what's going to happen, man, and excited to learn a lot about the Browns as we go through this process, man. So thanks for having me on.
No, you're more than welcome. As I say, thank you very much for coming on. And what you'll probably hear from this is maybe there's a hint of optimism about the Browns, but the Browns have kind of been Jekyll and Hyde, I suppose, really at the start of the season. But I think hopefully they'll be more. I'm trying to remember who was the good guy in the Jekyll and Hyde. I presume Hyde was the good guy. I think there'll be more Hyde than Jekyll for the rest of the season.
And man, it's weird because the Browns came out, had a rough start. And then after, basically mollywopped the Ravens last week with just a huge performance, which team is going to show up? Because, they've had a little bit of time off. They've had 8 days between the game. The 49ers are coming off the bye week.
Yeah.
But, Vegas has this as a pretty close game. The 49ers are 3.5-point favorites. But if you had to guess, Neil, man, let's start with you and just your optimism. Let's stay with it. How do you feel this game's going to play out?
I'm really optimistic for the game. I think it's going to be a close game. I think Vegas probably have it on the money, considering that I think both teams, ace in the hole is going to be both of their defensive lines against maybe weakened offensive lines. I think that might be fair to say. The Cleveland Browns offensive line has been very, very passable this year, but it's still about keeping Baker up. Baker Mayfield is probably like the 49ers with Garoppolo, keeping Baker clean, giving him throwing time to throw. Well, not even actually taking away time for him to throw seems to be better statistically if we look at the length of time that he throws and his percentage of passers and his QBR and stuff like that. The less time he takes, but basically keeping him in the pocket, not kind of scaring him out of the pocket and making him vacate it is probably. That's what it revolves around. Broken plays for the Cleveland Browns offense haven't tended this year to go very well. But last week when he played against the Ravens, they were able to keep him, give him his 2.5 seconds, his 3 seconds to throw the ball, and we could see what happened when There was more kind of short and intermediate routes for the wide receivers. They got their tight ends into play an awful lot more. They played 12 personnel an awful lot more, but at the start of the year they were only playing 11. I think it was something like 92% of snaps were only in 11 personnel as opposed to 12. But once they got the extra bigger body of Pharaoh Brown, who a lot of people thought would have been cut fodder at the end of the year, seems to have kind of come in. He's 6 foot, I think he's something like 6'8", and he's about 275 pounds. He's huge. He's he's candidate for WWE if things don't go right for him. He's a freak of nature, the size of him. But he performed pretty well against the Ravens at kind of chipping and being in there as extra protection for Baker. So my kind of feeling is that if obviously I'm very scared of your defensive line, and I think probably if you were to ask Kyle Shanahan, he might say, he's not exactly too confident of their offensive line going up against our defensive line either. So it's going to be interesting to see who gets the better of whose offensive lines. I think that's where it's going to lie. Who keeps their quarterback clean?
I think you're right. And, for the 49ers, we lose Joe Staley, our left tackle. He's been out, 13 years straight starter. He fractured his leg, so he's going to be out. So we have rookie Justin School, who's going to be stepping in. He got his first start out of the way 2 weeks ago. He played okay. He had a great first half and then had like 3 penalties and like a span of 10 plays. So he's going to be going up against Myles Garrett the entire game, which you talk about, is there a tougher matchup in the NFL outside of that? So it's going to be really curious. Now, I will say this, you mentioned the personnel packages of the Browns. The 49ers are leading the NFL in 21 personnel, where they have 2 backs, Kyle Juszczyk, our fullback, and then an additional tight end. So I'm hoping that they shift a lot of that protection over to the offensive left, defensive right side to try to slow down Myles Garrett. He's going to get his, defensive player of the year candidate, and rightfully so. His talent is just unbelievable. But this is going to be kind of the matchup when the 49ers are out there. Now, also, if we're staying with injuries, of the 4 outside corners between the Browns and the 49ers, 3 are missing this game with injury. They just announced Greedy Williams is going to be out, as well as the other corner for you guys, Denzel Ward, and Witherspoon for the 49ers is out. So, again, talk about horrible matchups on the 49ers side. We're going to have another first start undrafted free agent last year, Emmanuel Mosley, as of now is projected to start as the right outside cornerback. And who does he get a line up against in his very first career start? Odell Beckham Jr.
Well, he mightn't see an awful lot of the ball if he's lining up against OBJ if they go with the same game plan that they did against the Ravens, because OBJ only caught 2 for 20. But I think the opportunity there didn't really arise. It was more of a case of he was there. He was keeping Earl Thomas's attention. And he was being marked by Marlon Humphrey, So if you're able to take those 2 Pro Bowl caliber players away from the defense, and if you've got all the rest of the field to play with, I think Odell was okay with taking only his 2 for 20, considering it opened up the whole rest of the field for throwing lanes to tight ends. Ricky Seals-Jones had a career game, and also it allowed for any RPOs and to release Chubb up through the middle as well. So as I say, OBJ may not feature as heavily as he has in previous seasons, but I want him to. I want to see those highlight reel catches. I want to see him take it 89 yards to the house like he did against the Jets. But
that was wonderful, by the way. I was pulling for. I'm not a Greg Williams, the defensive coordinator for Jets, coming out talking trash against Odell Beckham. That was just poetic. I was so happy about that touchdown.
It was a figurative middle finger to Greg. All right, I like that. And and I think he's your top graded cornerback for the year as a former Browns. I don't know, did he make I think he did make the Browns 53 2 years ago. Maybe it was 2 or 3 years ago. K'Wan Williams.
Man, K1 has been special, and it's weird, in 3. So we're 3-0. We already had our bye week, so we haven't played 4 games yet. This would be our 4th. And K'Wan Williams, he had a really bad first game, and it just went he was abused. And then he responded by 2 back-to-back games, just going out of his mind. And so really excited to see if he can maintain that level, which against you guys is going to be huge in the slot. You guys got Callaway coming back. Curious to see who is going to be that third wide receiver on the first possession. Do you think it's going to be Callaway?
Nope. I think it's going to be Rashad Higgins if he's fully fit and he's ready to go. Rashad Higgins he's like a nightlight for Baker Mayfield, a safety blanket. He's like whatever you call it, a suitor pacifier for him. He just makes him feel safe and warm every time Higgins is on the field. And to be honest with you, in the previous 2 games, especially against the Rams when he was being forced out of the pocket, the reason that a lot of it was attributed to, and while he didn't come out and say those exact words, there was no check down or intermediate route for him. A lot of them were long developing, and he was just being forced out of the pocket. But now some of it was his own fault. But obviously when Aaron Donald is coming, nobody really wants him to hit your quarterback. But a lot of it usually is that Higgins is, while he can run the longer routes and gets great separation, he's also very good over the middle of the field as well. And when our tight ends, obviously losing David Njoku to IR, which hopefully he will be back when within the 8 weeks of the IR. But Higgins would usually be very good in those crosser routes and be that dependable set of hands that if you throw it in his direction, he's going to come down with it. So hopefully he's back. Higgins, Landry, Odell. Yeah, I'd be very, very happy to see those 3 line up.
Yeah, and I think, I'm with you on, Higgins he's a reliable player, and that's kind of what you want, especially whenever you're quarterback, Baker. One of the things that's going to be interesting is the turnovers, because both of these offenses, the Browns and the 49ers, they have a lot of turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
Baker's 6 interceptions. You've got 4 interceptions with Garoppolo, but also a lot of fumbles on our end. And so this could be one of those games where a team can lose 3 turnovers and somehow still win. I don't think it's going to be a very clean game just because of the pressure that's going to be brought on by both defensive lines throughout this game. So it's going to be one of those. Yeah, I think the Monday night billing is going to be perfect because it's going to have huge swings back and forth. Now, one thing that I am curious about, the over-under is set at 48.5 points combined score. That's what Vegas has it as. I just cannot find a way for it to be less than that. Both of these teams, the 49ers, have never scored less than 24 points this season. And despite having several touchdowns called back from penalty, I really do think that this is going to be one of those games that's north of 55 points.
I'd agree. I do, as I say, I think that the over-unders are, that the price differential is correct at maybe 3.5 either way. I would be the same. I think it's going to be a shootout, and I think people will actually probably see how, obviously, physically not similar that Mayfield and Garoppolo are, but I think that the two of them you'll see that they'll be kind of, both of them will want to stay in the pocket, both of them will want to get the ball out early, but they will cause turnovers, both of them. That's just what they do. They're gunslingers, and I'm excited to see that. I'd like to, I suppose, really with the offenses, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really understand what's going on with your wide receivers at the moment, considering that the 3 big names that you there, like I've Dante Pettis in every single one of my fantasy football teams, and I'm like, oh my God, I thought I was ahead of the curve here with him, because I had him last year as well. He's had 5 for 27, Goodwin is 6 for 125, and Samuel is 11 for 147, and a lot of it seems to be a ground-based attack, but is it a case, in your opinion, that the wide receivers, is it that George Kittle is just that good, that it's just keep on feeding him the ball, or is it a case that you're really waiting for your wide receivers, that they're on the cusp of breaking out?
I don't think that they are. I really do not. One, George Kittle is amazing. According to Pro Football Focus, he's the highest rated player in the NFL right now, not just at the tight end position, across offense and defense. Mm-hmm. He's a complete player. But what people don't realize is Kyle Shanahan, even though he does a lot of very creative things in the passing game, we lead the NFL in rush attempts. We have the most rush attempts, and that's who they have been. We are second to last in pass attempts. Now, we're 17th. We're right in the middle as far as passing yards. So it's just a very efficient offensive system that is predicated on the run. We run the ball a lot. So that's going to diminish targets by a lot there. And then when your tight end and your running backs are getting most of those targets anyway, there's just not a lot out there for the wide receivers. So if you look at Dante Pettis, who Week 1, he was injured. He only got 2 snaps and got 1 catch. Then he led the team as far as the wide receiver position in snaps in week 2. That backed down a little bit. But Deebo Samuel is definitely the wide receiver one of this group right now. And right behind him would be Marquise Goodwin and Dante Pettis tied at that second spot. But outside of that, there's really no fantasy reliable wide receivers. Those are, wide receiver 4s and wide receiver 5s best case scenario. But this is a George Kittle offense. He is more important than Jimmy Garoppolo. He is the guy. And I don't think there's a lot of teams in the NFL that you could say the quarterback isn't the most important person on the offense. And for the 49ers, they're one of the rare exceptions to that rule, because Kittle is the guy that makes everything go. The run game, he's the best, one of the better run blocking tight ends in the NFL. And then also, broke the record last year for most receiving yards ever from the tight end position. So Kittle is just that good. And I don't even think we've seen what's best from him. He had 2 touchdowns called back in week 1, and the kid's special. There's no reason why he shouldn't have 100 yards receiving every single game.
And traditionally, in the last 3 or 4 years, especially under Greg Williams, and it's kind of leached, especially in the first game of this year, it kind of leached into this Cleveland's defense, whereby we were caught over the middle from tight ends, mismatches left, right, and center. But I think now that while nobody wanted to see Chris Kirksey go down, I think having 2 more coverage-based linebackers has kind of given us an opportunity to kind of maybe stifle that a small bit. Mark Andrews didn't really have his way with us last week against, I know he did get a touchdown, but he was stifled slightly last week. They did try and rotate in an awful lot of tight ends, as Baltimore do, with Nick Boyle and Hayden Hurst as well. But Mac Wilson, rookie, out of Alabama, 5th-round pick for the Browns. He's very, very capable in coverage, more so than at the run game. And Joe Schobert for me, is one of the most complete middle linebackers in the NFL at the moment. The numbers he puts up are staggering, especially from a tackle point of view. But I do think that the 2 areas that the 49ers are really good at are obviously tight end and running the ball, are probably the 2 areas that the Browns probably don't want to see a team coming at us in those 2 areas, should I say. Even though we're kind of devoid of secondary help at the moment, I don't think we would be too fussed with any team coming up against us with a wide receiver package, because what we have there is working. But what we may be kind of a small little bit worried about is up the middle stuff, especially because Steve Wilkes will throw the kitchen sink at trying to get to the quarterback. Yeah,
and that's one thing, the 49ers, they hit 2 spots. They love to run off the offensive right side, right tackle. Mike McGlinchey over there, he's a great run blocking, huge 6'8" guy, whatever, 1st-round pick out of Notre Dame last year. He's exceptional. But they have certain spots that they want to attack. And if we saw anything from last week with Justin School, the rookie left tackle that's starting for Joe Staley, they didn't run behind him at all. They ran away from him every time. So it seems like Kyle Shanahan's offense is, let's protect this, rookie left tackle that's filling in for an injured player against, one of the better players. We're just going to stay away from it. And last week, the 49ers had the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they just ran every single play at TJ Watt. TJ Watt had a great game, but it seems like the decision was, we're not going to allow this rookie left tackle to lose the game for us. We don't care if we're running at your best player in TJ Watt, and he did have a great game, but the 49ers were able to kind of squeak out a victory despite all of the turnovers. So curious to see how that's going to go, because Myles Garrett, he can definitely change the game on his own. But my guess is they're going to be running the ball off the offensive right side almost 80% of the game.
And that's interesting. I suppose sometimes, there's only, everybody is human. There's only so much the best player can do, and they get tired. Best players get tired. And if you're rotating in and out, Matt Breida and Raheem Mostert, who is former Brown as well. There's a lot of ties between the 2 teams there, I think, with ex-players and with ex coaches and so on. But if you're rotating in 2 backs that have over 200 yards already this season, there's only so many times someone can pick themselves up off the ground and do another tackle, or make another tackle, or grab another set of ankles while being pushed back by somebody who's 6'6", 315 pounds. It does take its toll. So there may be method to the madness of just continually run at somebody until you completely wear them out. So it's hopefully it doesn't happen. I think Miles is a bit more of a freak than from that point of view than TJ Watt, considering Miles is just like some of the numbers he puts up in that you see in some of his workouts and things are just like phenomenally crazy. But yeah, so I don't know whether it would be the best tactic to run directly at Miles all day every day, because he's although he does give away penalties, that's the one thing. He might try and get off the blocks a small bit quick. He does always have a false start at an inopportune time in him. The personal foul penalties that he had at the start of the year, I think, were very out of character. There was a lot of frustration in those. I don't know where it came from. It seemed like he was trying out a new nasty edge to his personality that didn't suit him. But they seem to have calmed down. But he does have an inopportune false start penalty, or in neutral zone infraction penalty, should I say, in him. But if the refs don't see it and he gets into the backfield, it's a world of pain. Because he comes hard when he hits.
Yeah, and this is going to be fun. I really am excited that this was a Monday Night Football game, because the hype with the Browns, they got off to a slow start, but again, still in first place. That division it's going to be weird, man, because you can't write the Steelers off yet.
Nope.
Even though they had the 0-3 start, I don't think that you can. I think they're still in the mix. You guys are in first place, 2-2. But you've got that huge win against the Ravens, which was huge. But this game will kind of set the tone for two separate divisions, because if the 49ers come out 4-0, we had the Seahawks defeated the Rams, who are now 3-2. So that's already happened this week. So if the Niners do win, they're going to have a commanding lead over the NFC West. And then if you guys get this victory again on the road, goodness, you're talking about two amazing performances back-to-back weeks. So, man, I can't say thanks enough for having me on again, but I'm pumped. And, man, I had no clue how this game's going to turn out. I think it is a coin flip game that could go either way, but it's going to be a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, I definitely concur. I've been thinking about a kind of a score prediction that I was going to give this all day, and the score, every time I think about it, the only numbers that come into my mind are 31-28, but I just couldn't tell you which way it's going to be. I think it's going to be a shootout. I think we're going to have people talking about this Monday night game. And I think it's going to ebb and flow back and forward.
I like it, man. I'll stay with it, but I hate to say it, but this is kind of the first primetime game that has mattered in San Francisco. So I'm hoping the 49ers answer the call and the crowd answers the call, and then it's going to be a super loud evening, which is not a regular for San Francisco 49ers game since they moved the stadium to Santa Clara. Mm-hmm. It's been a very docile environment, but the coaches are out. John Lynch tweeted out today some rules for cheering and all those things. So I'm hoping that the fans answer the call. I'm hoping the 49ers eke out a close one, and something that, both teams can kind of walk away with where they are. And this is one of those ownership games. So who are you? Are you a pretender, or are you a division leader for a reason? So again, can't say thanks enough. This is awesome, man. And if we are on the schedule again, man, we got to do this again.
Absolutely, for sure. Absolutely, for sure. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on. It's, as I say, thank you so much for making the time. Actually, just very, very quickly, what time is the game for you guys on that side of the world on Monday? Is it a 6 o'clock game?
Yeah, it'd be about 5:30 here local time. So Pacific Standard Time. That's going to be 5:30.
half 7 p.m. Cleveland, and then I have to say,
what about for you? Where you're at, man?
It will be 1:30 in the morning. It'll be 1:30 a.m. So I do have Tuesday and Wednesday off. So I plan on that's the one thing about being relevant at the moment, is we've got quite a few late Sunday night games, late Monday night games, and Thursday night games. So having to set the alarm for 1:15, 1:20 a.m. has been but believe me, it's one of the inconveniences of relevance that I'm willing to take after a few years.
There you go.
Excellent. Well, John, thank you so much. Do you want to plug yourself, Twitter, podcast, anything like that? Just give a shout out to the guys. Yeah,
best way to find me is on Twitter at JL_Chapman, CHAPMAN. 49ers Rush podcast for all 49ers things. And if you're into fantasy football, I do own and run a fantasy football podcast as well. Eat Sleep Fantasy. You can find us on Twitter, Eat Sleep FF, or eatsleepfantasy.com. It's a website. It's what we do. It's just nothing but fantasy football stuff. So feel free to check me out either one of those places.
Excellent. I'll definitely be following that now for my my failing fantasy football teams at the moment. Oh God, every big name player that I had Antonio Brown, I had Saquon Barkley, I had Melvin Gordon, I had, you name it, anybody that's had any kind of negative connotation with them, either would it be injuries or just complete and utter insanity, I've had them this year. So I need to find these diamonds in the rough. So I'll certainly be following that fantasy football website.
Right.
Once again, John, thank you so much for coming on. And as I say, you never know, we could be talking again later on in the year for some postseason action.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Excellent. Thanks once again. Bye-bye. Thanks once again to John Chapman for popping on there. It was a thoroughly enjoyable conversation about the 49ers. Really looking forward to Monday night's game, and hopefully we can eke out a win. So follow the pod on @2GreenBrowns podcast. Follow John Cahill on @JohnCahill_IRL. Follow myself on @JimCustard. But most importantly, everybody, give us 5 stars if you can on Apple Podcast. Continue to listen to the show. Continue to subscribe and continue to expel the good virtues of this show to your friends and family. We would really appreciate it. So all that's left is to wish everybody a safe journey if you're traveling to Santa Clara at the weekend, and also to wish for a good Browns victory. So without further ado, I'd like to end the podcast with a Go Browns.